Hello there. Fan Critical is a podcast dedicated to TV and film. I'm Len.
Hi Len, I'm John. Join us and the rest of the Fan Critical team as we run through all of yours and our favourite shows.
Yep, we've covered all the greats, your Game of Thrones, HBO's Watchmen, even something that's not so great, The Walking Dead. And now we're about to begin our coverage of HBO's Lovecraft Country.
Could be good, could be shit, who knows. If you have ever wondered about shit films on Netflix, yeah, nice segue. We do cover them for our patented series, The Worst of Netflix. If you fancy having a laugh, come and join us on that.
And if you want to hear us get a little tipsy and talk about some of the shameful secrets and classic films that we've been lying about seeing for years, then you can check out our How the F*** Have You Not Seen That series. Some absolute classics in there like Gladiator, Reservoir Dogs and Spirited Away.
So if you do want to listen to us at Fan Critical, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts. We're on every place that you can find a podcast. All you need to do is search for Fan Critical.
Yeah, so do that. Do it right now. Stop what you're doing. Do it right now. Then go pour yourself a drink. Come have a laugh and listen to us. Cheers, guys.
See ya.
Look at you. The student has become the teacher.
Yes.
All right, let's see if I can do this. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite horror movies this month and discuss the social and political themes within. I am your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. the Peanut Butter Penis Papa, and I am thrilled to be joined, as always, by my co-host, Ty.
Hey, what's going on?
And joining us today for the first time ever, film school graduate and esteemed guest. Please put your hands together for Mel.
Hello, great to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you. Thanks so much. And before we get into the thick of it, we're going to ask you to listen to us and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you happen to get your podcast. Don't forget to go to our YouTube channel where you will be privy to exclusive content such as our outtakes and other behind-the-scenes stuff. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. Find us on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast. Email us. Let us know your thoughts at politipopcast@gmail.com. And you can always find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. Now let's get into this. Today we are going to be reviewing Halloween. That means the first movie by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill in 1978, the sequel that was made in 2018, and because, once again, I have a lot of time on my hands, just like last week, a few other films in the franchise, because this is my favorite horror franchise, and I've been, every September and October, I'm always watching them, so that's my thing. Before we get into these movies specifically, Mel, I want to ask you, what is your relationship with the horror genre? Are you like super into it, or it's not your thing, or how do you feel about it?
No, not necessarily. I do enjoy a lot of the older things in the sense of Vincent Price, Bela Lugosi. However, though, when it really starts getting into more something that's relative or realistic that could actually happen, I'm too busy sitting in my bathroom figuring out how to use my shower shaving cream and my razor on how to use it as a device to kill someone. Anything that could possibly be real and happen, I'm not feeling that because, those in the older films are either already dead in real life or it's too far removed. You're trying to tell me about some guy chasing me down, slowly walking down the street? Yeah, that could happen.
Yeah, so it's funny because, like, I was afraid of a lot of horror movies when I was a kid. Then I grew up and, I wasn't. But then Halloween came out in 2018, and I'm still looking behind my shower curtain and everything and, like, thinking, like, oh, what if somebody was hiding in there? Is there anything in this bathroom that I could use to fight them with? Except for one of us, that's a very real possibility. And it's more likely you. And that's something that, like, every time Halloween comes around, my fiance and I, like, I'll try and get her to watch some horror movies. She's a lot better with the supernatural stuff than I am. But when it comes to the slasher genre, because it's all about, like, guys breaking into your house with a knife and killing you, that does freak her out because it is a real possibility for her.
That's how my girlfriend is too. She is, that's the stuff that gets to her is the serial killers, the home invasions. We watch The Exorcist, and I'm covering my eyes, and she's yawning. It doesn't get to her the same
Well,
way.
I mean, there's only but so many times you can watch Green throw up split pea soup over and over again. So, I mean, this is where we are.
That's true.
And not to be an ageist in this call, but I'm the only one who was alive in '78 on this call. And I had friends who had older siblings who I remember us watching Halloween, and all of it like through the fingers in our hands. You know what I mean? Like completely, like what? And because kids were out trick or treating and hanging out, and everybody's having happy-go-lucky time. And I grew up in the East Village, and I was like, man, there's a guy looking like Mike Myers who lives across the street in my building as a squatter. And I'm like, I can't mess with this. There's no way.
Yeah. I think Halloween's definitely one of the scarier slasher flicks out there. I enjoy the horror genre a lot. I've seen all the Friday the 13th, etc. But, Halloween in particular is just something really unsettling about Michael Myers and about those films. It's very hard to watch them alone at night for me. So, he's terrifying. Yeah, he's a terrifying entity.
I mean, he just doesn't talk.
No, he doesn't. There's no character. I mean, there is character to him, but there's no Freddy is always cracking jokes and stuff like that. But you don't know what is going on in that guy's head. And I mean, Halloween was one of the pioneers of the slasher genre. A lot of people say it was the first slasher film. I believe Black Christmas is credited with that, and I still haven't seen
Texas Chainsaw. Also
I was gonna say Texas
before.
Chainsaw as well.
It did. I want to say that was closer to torture porn, but it really Saw was the torture porn pioneer also. It just became how gory things can be, and I think that unfortunately that is a ripple of Halloween. A lot of people saw the success of an indie film like Halloween and thought, well, let's recreate it with Jason and a bunch of other slashers, but they thought that the formula was having young ladies get killed for having sex by a guy with a mask, and the formula of Halloween was more about the two main characters. I mean, there's a few main characters, but really, I don't think you have a good Halloween movie unless you have a good protagonist in Laurie Strode, and you have the antagonist that is Michael, or the Shape, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up a good point about a lot of the horror movies targeting women and men having sex and that kind of stuff. And Halloween inadvertently kind of does that, right? In the first one, a lot of the victims are kind of trying to party and have fun, and Laurie's kind of like the do-gooder one. She's the one that studies and does her homework and babysitting, actually doing her job, and she's the one that kind of starts to fight back. And I don't know if they planned it that way or if it just kind of worked out, but
I do know.
That kind of became a staple of the Final Girl.
Oh no, because what I was talking about, also The Hills Have Eyes, when you talk, and that really brought people the fear of getting lost. Those type of scenarios where, again, watching that kind of film, I'm like, fuck, I need to make sure my GPS is on and my shit's working. You know what I mean? And if it's telling me to make a right down some stupid dark road, I think I'm going to stay on 95.
Yeah, they play on real fears.
Yeah, when Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses came out, I must have been 12 or 13 years old. And my father, Lord of the Rings episode, listen, he was shitty, was like, hey, watch this movie because this could happen to you. Now, I'm sure something unfortunate could happen to me if I got lost in the wrong part of the world, but I'm not sure House of a Thousand Corpses would happen exactly. But Ty, to bring back your point about the idea of the horror tropes, because there are quite a few. The one we're going to be focusing on in this one is the Final Girl, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But there are a lot of tropes that come from Halloween. I think it was because of people's misinterpretations that the John Carpenter and Deborah Hill stated that it wasn't supposed to be if you have sex or drink underage, you deserve to get killed. It was more like everybody else was just too damn distracted, and Laurie was the only one who had her eyes up. And in the novelization of the first film too, they do mention that like she heard a story about Michael and Judith when she that day, and like in her head she was already afraid, thinking like, oh, what leads someone to do that, blah blah blah. So like she kind of already was looking out for him without knowing
Right.
that he was a danger. That being said, Ty, can you tell us a little bit about the final girl?
Sure. Yeah. I actually have a great article here from the Film School Rejects. And it's kind of about the history and a little bit of the transformation of the final girl. I'm just going to read a little bit from it and we'll talk about it. So, the final girl is an iconic horror trope embodied by strong female characters able to survive any bloody scenario thrown at her. These women have made the term final girl a badge of honor. The two words, which are emblazoned on t-shirts and stamped onto enamel pins, form a self-imposed title that many in the horror community use to describe themselves. It's a phrase that carries implications of strength, perseverance, and resilience. Where did the final girl come from and how has it changed? Film scholar Carol Clover coined the term in her 1987 essay, Her Body, Himself, Gender in the Slasher Film, in which she extensively writes about the slasher subgenre of horror and its key parts. She details the characteristics of the slasher, the place where each murder happens, the weapons, and the sole survivor, whom she calls the final girl. Clover describes the character as such. She is one who encounters the mutilated bodies of her friends, receives the full extent of her preceding horror and of her own peril, who is chased, cornered, wounded, whom we see scream, stagger, fall, rise, and scream again. This is a character is a woman who must go through hell and back, screaming, running, and stabbing her way to survival. She's a virginal figure that must slowly transform into a monster herself to defeat the murderer. Importantly, this character, despite her gender, must be relatable to the core audience of the slasher film, young men. She's not sexual and is rather shy around boys. Her name and appearance can be described as boyish. She's not totally feminine or masculine. The final girl is almost without gender. And one of the most iconic final girls is Laurie Strode in John Carpenter's 1978 slasher Halloween. She's the nerd of her friend group, shown prioritizing her studies and babysitting over hanging out with her friends on Halloween night. While her friends are having sex and getting murdered for it, Laurie's babysitting her young neighbors. Her studious nature makes her the perfect final girl, who's both resourceful and original. The infamous villain Michael Myers doesn't stand a chance. So the final girl is typically the one who kind of stays out of trouble the most, is usually the most aware, and seems to survive as her friends are one by one, killed by whoever the killer is or monster, and makes it to the end, and usually will have some sort of final climactic fight with the killer. And I think back in the 70s, you really saw it as they describe here, characters like Laurie Strode, a character from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as like a group of friends. They're young, they're kind of scared, they're screaming for their lives, but I think it's really transformed. They kind of go into this a little bit in the article here too, into a stronger character now. In more modern horror films, you kind of see this final girl like really fight back instead of being so scared. They kind of take the fight to them, and you see that a little bit more in Halloween 2018, which we're going to be discussing as well.
She's the damsel in distress. And even though she's fighting back, it pisses me off that she keeps dropping the knife and not making sure he's dead. And it doesn't end because clearly she didn't finish the job because he's able to keep coming back.
Yeah.
She sees what's happening in front of her. She knows who's dead. She's got fucking rock and roll high school girl left in the pantry, practically sitting there dead. Her boyfriend's in the other thing hanging. The buddy's on the bed with her sister's headstone, and she doesn't like, you know what I mean? Like, this needs to be like, fuck you, you need to die now, bitch. But instead it's, let him slash me. We get into this whole fight. I take out my needle pin, I stab him in the neck, and then I have his knife in my hand, but I decide to throw it on the ground. Not once, not twice near him, but 3 times. Like, come on, lady. Get your shit together.
That's the moment where you kind of scream at the TV or the screen in the theater, You're like, oh no, like he's not dead. Like, look at, how many times have you heard people go, he's behind you? It gets you invested, right? Because, they need to keep you on the edge of your seat. They kill him too quickly, it's over. But it can be frustrating, I'm sure, to see that and be like, come on, like you can do more than that.
See, I'm the one that at that point is like, fuck you, you deserve to die. Like, this is over, pack your shit up. Because it's inevitable that he is going to wake up, because there's no way they're going to let this end at this motion. But then you decide to run up the stairs, get the kids, get them out of the house to go across the street, and you stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird logic. Now that being said, I wanna bring race into this a bit because we were talking off mic, Ty, you and I, about like how like there are so many white people in the 2018 one, and I'm like, oh, there's even more in the 78 one. Like I think maybe one cop was black, but
Yeah, the black dude with the cowboy hat.
oh well, I meant even in the original one in 1978, like, but so this is a Midwest town. It's in the suburbs, and I think that these people kind of don't expect this stuff to happen. Lori is a 17-year-old naive white girl who's never had to worry about a thing in her life. Do you think that story is different in a if the main character is black, if you have a black final girl or even any final girl of color? Because I have plenty of Latina cousins who, they probably wouldn't do the shit Lori did.
Being a woman of color, and I don't know if Ty filled you in, but I come from an interracial family where my father was a Black Panther and my mom was a hippie, and they were a match made in heaven and went off into the sunset.
That's awesome.
When it comes to you're watching Candyman, a movie that's in the projects, going from all that stuff, and they're fighting to the death. And where they see the black community really is more like, what? You're in my motherfucking house. Everybody's going down. Versus, you just killed all my friends and you're setting up this very dramatic stage for me to see them. So I'm going to throw the knife next to you and scream. And I really don't, like, in the sense of like, black people are more, have the ability of survival versus the lily white suburban situation where damsel in distress again, I need help, please come help me.
You took the words right out of my mouth with that. Yep.
It's so, divided when you think about it. I mean, if we go into where our world is and what our lives look like right now in the fucking dumpster fire of 2020, it really goes back to, yeah, right? It really goes, you see the comparison and you see the reality. Oh, we need to protect the suburbs from the urban environment that will come in and take your lives away.
Yep, absolutely. That's what they say.
And really, ruin the whole middle upper class situation. But yet we need to protect you from the black people in this organization, Black Lives Matter. And but a slasher can come and want to kill all of you again, and you fucking drop the knife next to him 3 times. So It just really connected without being connected. You know what I mean?
Oh, it absolutely is, because, these people might be afraid of like, black people coming into our neighborhood. And, that's a narrative that's been given from the inception of our country, as soon as, while the, the slave trade was going on, and then into Reconstruction, everything. It's always been, we're afraid of black people rebelling and overthrowing us. But meanwhile, how many mass shooters are white? How many of them are white supremacists? How many domestic terrorists are white? And in this movie, in all of these movies, there is a white man with a very white mask on who is who you really have to be afraid of.
But my only, I mean, not only, but then I get really pissed off in the 2018 version where they have the only black guy in the movie wearing a cowboy hat. I mean, let's be for real.
Well, he is in the Midwest. I mean, and he is a cop too. So there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Assimilation.
Yeah, assimilation, being assimilated. When I think about this part, though, with the state, because it's in the state of Illinois, I believe they have the death penalty there. Fucking Mike Myers wouldn't have been killed. He doesn't get, like, seriously. Like, the criminally insane are the criminally insane. 2, if he was a black dude, they would have shot him dead in the street. No one would have tried to save his fucking life.
I mean, Loomis did try.
I shot him 6 times. That's what he says in every movie.
But then the other fucking doctor wants to become Mike Myers.
Yeah.
There's this obsession, I think, in our culture with serial killers, right? And there's people who are obsessed with them. They fantasize about them, like they're fans. How many serial killers would get love letters? Yeah, you did it. You went through a stage, right?
I did.
Where they get letters from people. They marry fans. Like it's a sick obsession.
Charlie Manson had a massive following.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's really bizarre. And I think that's where we see, in 2018, that kind of comes into play a little bit in the story itself.
But all of these serial killers, Ted Bundy, who I always mention to my daughter, he graduated from her alma mater, Temple University.
Oh wow!
Oh, word.
What do you know?
That's great.
And just so you know, on the tour, they don't mention it. But
Uh,
it's so funny. Like, I'm like, a serial killer went to your school, sweetie. She's like, I hate you, Mom. But,
That's
they're
pretty
all,
funny.
well-bred white men who don't
Yeah.
come from poverty, who don't come from urban issues, who don't come from neglect or anything of that nature. And they are apprehended. They are taken into custody. They are sent to mental hospitals and institutions. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer wound up getting killed in prison, but he got there. And when you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about these
He
type of
made it through the
situations, he
system
made
to
it
go through
through the
prison.
system to get there. And you're talking about a young man, Trayvon Martin, walking down the street with Skittles in his hand and a hood, and he's getting killed because he's suspected. You know what I mean? And then we have Kyle Rittenhouse, who thinks that he's, the end of all ends, and is walking down the street with his rifle or whatever it is. And the police ask him if anyone's hurt down the road, or if he needs help, or if he's hurt. They don't apprehend him because he's walking down the street with a fucking assault rifle. But
Well,
if
he's an
that
American
was
patriot.
Well, yeah, he's there to help them, and they know that. They could just look at the color of his skin and be like, "Oh, he's one of us."
people don't really realize, like I saw a recent piece where they said, the reason you don't see the KKK and the police in the same room is the same reason you don't see Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana in the same room. It is all relevant. And this whole like, oh well, there's good cops and there's bad cops. Any good cop that is willing to cover a bad cop is a bad cop.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna bring up bad cops a bit in this in this podcast too, because the 2018 they're semi competent, but in the rest of the franchise, cops are completely useless, which is interesting. Now we're gonna get into the movies, but I wanna talk a bit about how, like, the horror genre, slasher specifically, in some ways with the final girl trope, they tend to be like the most feminist movies. But also you do have, the male gaze is very present in these films. I took one feminism in film class in college. No, I took two. But yeah, so the male gaze is present in all of these films, in which, we're seeing the young girls getting undressed, and we're seeing them having sex and all this other stuff. But not just that, but we're seeing them get killed naked. We're seeing them get tortured naked in the nude, and it kind of, I think, blurs the lines between violence and sexuality. And if anyone has a kink that, I like to be choked, I like knife play, needle play, whatever, it's not to kink shame you, but I think there are, I do think that is kind of counterproductive to the idea of the final girl, in that some people might be watching these movies not for the final girl, but because they get to see the bad guy do terrible things to the girls, and they might relate more with those guys, with the antagonist.
There's so many people that have tattoos of these serial killers, right? Like that just, love them. They idolize them. And I think, when I watch these movies, I'm cheering for the people to survive, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to see them make it to the end. But there's a lot of people that enjoy the opposite of that. I think probably a large majority of horror movie fans enjoy, watching all these teens get murdered and seeing what's going to happen to them. And, I guess it does say a lot about people and our thought process on these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, seeing a naked teenager brushing her hair at her vanity, getting killed by her 6-year-old brother, and step back just into the filmography of it, I mean, seeing that way in 1978, really, there was no filming happening on that level where you're looking through someone else's eyes or from someone else's perspective. Other than maybe Mike Nichols in The Graduate when he does the leg shot through to Dustin Hoffman. But,
Right.
really, it's huge that, he's looking at his naked sister, which is pretty much every pubescent or young boy's fantasy. And now is cutting her up and, killing her. And I'm sure that there are more men out there who got off of that scene of the actual process versus any ill will or feeling horrible for the girl dying.
Yeah, but that's a good point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, and also they didn't make it a point to put in any teenager, like actors who actually look like teenagers, at least in my opinion. I wasn't around in 78.
I agree.
Can't tell you what 78 teenagers looked like, but even just in the 2018 version, they look like kids, and it might be because I'm older now. But Sandy Johnson, she was a Playboy magazine's Playmate of the Month for June in 1974. She was the one who played Judith Myers in the first film. So they specifically chose an attractive woman
who had a breast enlargement.
Oh, did she? I thought those were natural.
Her boobs were, I'm telling you, I don't know if she did or not, but those boobs are spectacular and perfect. And not happening.
I don't know, they have like that swoop. They had that swoop up, which, it isn't very common, but that's why they chose a Playmate. Yeah. They made sure that this was a hot girl being killed by this kid. And, I'm going to bring up the novelizations a few times also. I'm going to be going through all throughout Halloween because I just love Halloween. But one thing they do mention in a lot of the books is how Michael actually does have a lot of repressed sexual anger, like sexual aggression.
Yes.
And that's what leads him to kill. I personally like the idea that he just kills to kill. But
I mean, he is targeting though like a specific group of people, and they're girls that resemble, his sister more or less, right? Like he's looking for that sister figure. Even though they did kind of get rid of the idea that Laurie is his actual biological sister in the new sequel, but that was kind of a theme of the movies. So he is targeting women of that age group specifically.
It's just odd to me that they never really touch on more of the information of her. She was 2 when he was 6, and then when he killed his older sister, and then the parents die in a car crash, and then they come back to it where she's adopted by this other family, and she just completely forgets everything that ever happened. And it's like this backstory that they really never delve into, which I would have actually enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, that's why 2018 just kind of rebooted it. They're like, we're just going to sequel after the first one and kind of get rid of that.
I mean, some of the greatest stories do have that, though. Jesus was born and then he was 30 years old. We don't know Jesus's, Batman Begins style training years. But before we keep delving into this film, Ty, do you have a plot for one or both of these?
Of course I do.
All right, and beware spoilers, listeners. I mean, we already threw some out there, but there's going to be detailed plot spoilers.
Listen, if you haven't seen the original Halloween, shame on you.
Shame.
All right.
Go for it.
Halloween, 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night, 1963. Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois, to kill again. And I also have for the next one, Halloween 2018. Laurie Strode confronts her longtime foe, Michael Myers, the masked figure who has haunted her since she narrowly escaped his killing spree on Halloween night 4 decades ago.
All right. So I just want to take a moment, and this hits home. I've mentioned it in previous episodes how I grew up in a house with with mentally ill family. My mom was paranoid schizophrenic. She had depression. She had psychosis. Like it was really really rough life for somebody like this. And specifically, I'm bringing up sources from an article I found. It'll be in the show notes. But they kind of bring up how schizophrenia has been misinterpreted as like a violent multiple personality disorder, and it makes people act out and do terrible things, when in fact it's more likely to hurt the person who has it most, and it's impairing their language skills, their sense of self, their perception, even their ability to earn a living. And it's always asylums and mental health hospitals that are made to be like where hauntings and terrible things happen. And I just want to say, despite the fact that this is my favorite horror franchise, and it's something I have to come to realize with the Batman lore too, is that he's always beating the shit out of mentally ill people. And and movies are some of, if not the most powerful form of media, because they really do influence people's ideas based on what's in the film. Or, I think former Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia cited the show 24 when he was pro-torture, despite the fact that the CIA torture report said that it doesn't work. And, I want to say personally, when I saw the movie Hannibal in 2001, once again, way too young for this. I must have been like 10 or 11 years old. I didn't eat for 2 weeks because there was a scene where he cuts a guy's brain out and feeds it to him. and I didn't eat for 2 weeks. So like, these are very powerful images that are narratives that are put out there, and it is important to recognize that while Michael is a violent killer, he is the minority. We don't see any others in this franchise escaping from Smith's Grove and doing the things he does. So I just wanted to.
But he's not actually diagnosed with anything, correct? Like Dr. Loomis mentions that he tried to help him.
Evil. That's all.
Yeah, he's like, I tried to help him for 8 years, and then I spent the next 7 trying to keep him in prison because he was just evil behind those eyes. So like,
also just goes into calling him a it. He's no longer a he.
Yeah.
So he has
removed
like any humanity from the situation whatsoever.
I myself grew up with, even though I had a mentally ill mom who wasn't violent most of the time, she. I was still afraid of mentally ill people because the stuff my father told me. He would be like, oh, they're dangerous. Like when I would go to visit my mom in a group home or something, like, like there are patients there being nice to me, or residents, because they were actual like houses. There are residents there being nice to me and everything. And he would be like, oh, don't say certain things around them. You never know when they're going to snap. Oh, they're having a barbecue. Don't eat their food. They don't wash their hands. Like, yo, you fucked a mentally ill person however many years ago. Why are you talking so much shit about mentally ill people now, man? Like,
Weird.
But yeah, so we do have our own stigmas that we do need to get rid of. But did anyone have anything specifically about the first film? Because most of my notes on the first film just come from 2018. So
no one believes her. And no one believes anyone. That's my big thing. There is like some serious trust issues throughout both of these films. The daughter in 2018 doesn't believe the mother, and the granddaughter, and the husband, and he's the one to fucking go, thank God. But, nobody believes. And then just so you know, throughout this entire podcast, I will be referring to PJ Souls as Rock and Roll High School Girl.
Got it. That's right, because she was in Rock and Roll High School. That's right.
Yeah. So then like Rock and Roll High School Girl is like, no, what are you talking about? No one's following you, Annie. Oh, no one's following you. You're crazy. She's the first one to die after she gets her ass caught in a fucking window. Let's be for real about that one.
Oh, yeah, and he doesn't even kill her there. He kills her in the car for some reason.
Yeah, I was like, perfect. Like, if that wasn't the perfect setup for a murder, like, I would have killed her there just for shits and giggles.
He just goes, no.
And this guy is a sociopath.
I don't know. It's like he didn't want to kill
it.
the kids back then? That's the only thing I can imagine, right?
Yeah, but he kills the kid in 2018 in the car.
By then, he's full evil. He's still developing
a little evil. Dr. Loomis fails us again.
But no, that's an interesting point though, because the kids also, they mentioned, I saw the boogeyman, and Laurie's like, oh, stop, there's nobody out there.
Yeah, but like when Laurie's trying to explain it, no one's believing her, but then in turn, she doesn't believe the kids.
Yeah, yep. And then when she's begging for help because he's chasing her, she runs next door and knocks on the door, and they look outside the window and they look at her. And they turn the lights off. And she's like, can't you hear me? She's like, help me. And they won't help her.
And in this small niche neighborhood, which I'm sure everybody knows everybody and everybody's fucking the next door neighbor, they would assume that your neighbor would open the door because they don't even lock doors in these places. Like, so I was a little shocked that the neighbors were like, fuck you. I mean, granted, if they were black and some crazy white chick was on the stoop with blood dripping, for sure. However, I didn't see any of the races cutting through the window there. He might have been the black guy with the cowboy hats family. Who knows?
So it's great that you bring that up, actually, that like nobody believes her, because there's a couple of elements to this film that, if you look for them, they're there. The number one thing is trauma, which, actually that's right in your face. The one thing Jamie Lee Curtis related it to was the Me Too movement. And I just want to read an excerpt from one of her interviews that she had here, where she says, trauma is generational. I'm sure many of us have friends whose grandparents or parents were Holocaust survivors, and you see how that trauma goes through generations. Obviously, that's a very heavy thing to reference. This is fiction, but trauma is generational, and it's passed on unless it's helped. Of course, now there are a lot of people that spend their lives helping other people through traumas, but I believe Laurie Strode went to school on November 1st. I think she went to school with a bandage on her arm and maybe some stitches from the emergency room. I think her parents sent her back to school. And of course, 2 days before, she was an intellectual honor student, heading off to be the valedictorian of her class. She was going to get out of Haddonfield and go off to expand her mind. And 2 days later, she was a freak. and she does bring up later on that she talks about Me Too and how this power of believing women and being able to take that power back and bring those aggressors to justice. And and while Lori wasn't sexually assaulted, she was assaulted and attacked. Her friends were killed in front of her. It was an incredible trauma that she never did get help for. A big reason is because she said, like, back then, nobody fucking gave you help like that. Today it would be a different story.
There was no rape counseling or therapy or anything of that nature to help with any traumatic experiences that you may have.
I also think it's interesting that Michael Myers he kills in a very intimate way, especially in the first one. He spends a lot of time following and watching, and he has all these opportunities. But he wants to just keep looking at them, and this kind of all begins because Laurie walks up to his house while he's inside, right?
Oh, to drop
and then
the
he
key off
decides
for
that he's
the
going
viewing.
to follow her and her friends for the remainder of the day and evening. He strangles her friends. He gets up right close to them. He pretends to be the boyfriend of one. He does very intimate, strange and there's a constant shots from behind him as he's just looking through the window or hiding behind a tree, and they really build the tension. Whereas in the 2018 one, he kind of just gets down to business more. He's just walking through, just murdering people.
Well, he lost 40 years worth of time being in that.
He did, yeah. It's kind of a revenge tale, right? It's kind of a revenge tale, 2018 in a way. And whereas this one, he's just a creepy stalker dude who winds up, murdering these kids.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when you think about where he's walking through, and just because she ever so gently places that key underneath the mat for the realtor, it turns into this whole you're my source, you were the center of my attention. Obviously, whether he knew or didn't know that that's his sister is neither here nor there. Which also seems a little bizarre to me, that she would be adopted by a family so close to the house that her sister was killed in, and that nobody knows.
But they got, they got rid of that, right? 2018, she's no longer related to him. That's it,
Yeah.
So they were I guess they realized how convoluted the films got.
Well, because the 1978 one, it's not even a part of the story. It's just the backstory. And I mean, let's be for real. Realistically, you think the people in that neighborhood, the housewives, aren't chit-chatting and gossiping about the fucking psychopath who lived around the corner and killed his other sister, and now she was adopted by another family and they live up the road? I mean, let's be for real. That would be the coffee click of the century.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a big thing that Mustafa Akkad wanted to do, rest in peace, the late Mustafa Akkad, he was one of the big financiers for the Halloween franchise, and he didn't want to do any Halloween movies unless Michael Myers was the focal point of them, which, came back to what you said, Ty, about how, we really worship the killers and the bad guys, but what made Halloween magical, I do think that he is a great antagonist, don't get me wrong, but it was his relationship with the right protagonist. And, after Halloween 3, they had a little girl for 2 movies, and her foster family that she was living with, and the only reason she was being targeted is because she was Laurie Strode's daughter. It was a whole thing, and like you said, Ty, it got very convoluted. There was a cult that was brought into it, but you can't just have the aggressor. You have to have, and I don't want to say the victim, you have to have the survivor be a very strong character. And that is, that's what's important. I do think Michael Myers should own an Etsy shop, personally. Today, that's something he would do. Because even in 2018, he does go trick-or-treating, right? He goes house to house, killing, get this weapon, get that weapon, boom, boom, boom. But he does take his time with some of them. When he kills Vicky as she's babysitting, the best character in the whole film, Julian, while she's babysitting, he sets her up in the bedroom to be looked at. He sets up her boyfriend to be looked at, and he did the same thing in the 78 version. It's not just something he needs to do to get it out of his system. It's something that he enjoys and takes pride in.
I mean, his artistry when he starts placing the bodies in 78, and I mean in 78 it's a lot more detailed. He takes the headstone, he lays Annie on the bed, he puts Judith's headstone above her. Rock and Roll High School Girl is in that little closet cut, and then the boyfriend again is hanging upside down. But not only that, but then he takes the mindset after he's killed these two people already in this house, that he's now going to take a sheet and put the boyfriend's glasses on just for shits and giggles so that she thinks that's her boyfriend.
Yep.
And it's extremely
He's very clever.
And for someone that they keep calling an it or evil, there's a definite mindset where he is in control of the situation and is going to take every step throughout his process and enjoy it. And you can see that happening, especially when he is putting together what his plan is and how he's going to map it out.
I mean, even the fact that he drives, right? Like he's been in a mental institution for so long. And Loomis talks about how he stole a car, and like he doesn't know how to drive. And Loomis goes, "Well, maybe someone around here taught him." And like that's like a throwaway line, but it's just like, he clearly, he's driving around the neighborhood for hours. He knows what he's doing. He's
that nobody notices.
Yeah,
actually,
he's smart.
I didn't just think of it until now, but I think Smith's Grove is like at least 100 miles from Haddonfield. Do you think he had to stop to get gas? And how do you think that? Well, actually, he was just a regular person. He didn't have the mask until he got into Haddonfield.
No, but he did have the hospital gown on, but he didn't get the overalls, the coveralls, until he killed the mechanic. So
yes, which was are we talking 78 or 2018?
78.
Because they do have a lot of. Okay, yeah. So was I. I was just making sure because they have a lot of the same beats.
Oh, for sure. I was looking for when watching 2018, because they have like a thing where the nurse has a book of matches that says Rabid Red House. And then when you go to where Loomis finds the mechanic with the truck and he's dead and the coveralls are gone, Michael had her matches and left them there.
It's really nice
that
you notice those things, because I think filmmakers put those in, and because of the shock of what's happening on screen, a lot of people do tend to overlook it. So it's good to have an eye for that. And I have an ear for like audio stuff now that I've been doing the podcast and voice acting. Like I can listen to an audiobook and know exactly when the narrator had to do a pickup and they recorded with a little bit different level. Like just stupid stuff like that you end up knowing when you're behind the curtain. Now, there is this matter where Dr. Sartain in the beginning says that he wants to study like evil. Now, I don't think it was meant this way, but to me that kind of seems like giving a voice to shitty people's opinions, because in this country we have a thing where like we have to listen to everybody's opinions. Everybody's opinions are great, but that's how we get fucking Sean Hannity. That's how we get Ben Shapiro.
Fucking Tucker Carlson.
Yep, Tucker. Oh, thank you. Yes, definitely.
Number one on the list.
All these. All these monsters sharing their opinions. Like, do either of you think that's constructive at all, studying evil or studying problematic takes?
Well, I mean, again, for me, it really goes into like, wait, Illinois, you don't have the fucking death penalty for this guy? Not that I'm a fan of the death penalty, but if someone's going to get the death penalty, I think Mike Myers is on the top of the list. Just throwing that out there.
That's fair.
But, the studying of evil, like, and as you start to see in the 2018 film, he studied the evil so much that he wanted to become the evil. And it really starts going into these people who are fascinated by this kind of stuff. And to me, this has everything written over it of fucking Trump supporters, because they are idolized by pure evil. And they think that this is an amazing thing as they watch him. They think that he is, no matter what he does, they still want to be in his presence, whether he's murdered 5 people or given a whole entire group of people COVID or fucked up this country to beyond recognition. But they want to still be in his presence.
Well, I think like you see like with James Holmes, right? The mass shooter from the movie theater,
Colorado.
The Batman shooting. Yes, yeah, they put him in newspapers. They talked about him nonstop. It stopped being about the victims and started being about the killer. And I think we do this so much in the media, in the news. We talk about these horrible people, and we make them almost iconic. We make them almost heroes to people. And you kind of see that in 2018, right? They're making a podcast, these two people, about Michael Myers and his killings. And they go to first to Michael to try to get, his side of things. Obviously he doesn't talk. They go to Laurie Strode and she's like, what, he killed 5 people. Why do you want to talk about him? Why do you want to get his side of the story? Why do you want to humanize him? Which is what Rob Zombie did with his Halloween movies, right? Like humanizing this killer. I think that's an issue that we see in the real world, and it's a huge theme of this film. Laurie just wants to be, wants him to be dead. She wants to move on from him, but people want to keep him alive. They want to study him. They want to record podcasts. They want to talk about him, and they keep giving him, power in a way, right? Like he gets motivated once again seeing his mask.
And I actually I'll piggyback. There's a whole piggyback party. I'm going to piggyback off what Melanie said earlier when she was talking about how how people are just obsessed with Trump and stuff like that. I do believe in my heart of hearts, Trump has got, if he wins in November or not, his mission has been accomplished because he's always wanted to be talked about. Like, that's his thing, his brand. And every single day he's being talked about. And that's really what he loves.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. And my mom, who is a staunch liberal, open-minded, refuses to say his name. And
that's good. Does she say 45?
For yeah, she doesn't know. Actually, Ty knows what my mom calls him. Ty, what is it?
Oh, I forgot. Sorry.
Oh, you fail. She calls Trump a warlock.
Oh, right. A warlock.
And she has been writing op-ed pieces to the New York Times for many, many years, and one of them involves him being a warlock. And he has cast a spell on people.
Oh,
because
man.
Well, I'm sure that I think his grandfather was a grand wizard. So
yeah, so my mom
plays
is
into that
convinced that he is like the evilest of evil, and that there is no way in hell these people don't know how evil he is and what they are doing, and that they too are just as evil and are allowed to come out into the world because this piece of shit is here.
I would argue actually that Mike Pence is almost maybe more evil or more similar to Michael Myers, as he just like kind of hangs out in the background studying everything, and he wants to like.
That's so true. He
just wants to imprison women, and
I don't know. I mean, I've yet to see a fly land on Trump's hair, but maybe because it's not real. I don't know. I think we should interview the fly. If anybody has time, the Washington Post has put together an interview with the fly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Let's get that fly's side of the story, please. But Beelzebub always had flies around them, right?
There you go. I think Pence deserves the title of warlock more, because a warlock is an individual, at least in Dungeons and Dragons, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ty, an individual who has made a pact with a demon.
Yes.
And therefore, he has made a pact with a demon. And this demon in particular, which, once again, I'm referring to 45. Ty, you brought up Rob Zombie's Halloweens. I wasn't going to, but I'm going to go into it now just because you did. It is... Now, I don't think that I empathized with at the time when I was in my serial killer phase, I did empathize with Michael. But now, looking back at it, it is interesting to see this incredibly threatening and imposing figure be really just a little boy who was afraid and was abused. And I do think it is important to look at that, not to humanize people, but like if you learn the history of Donald Trump and learn about how shitty his family was and how he treats his kids the same way and everything, I don't feel sorry for him at all, because guess what? I had a fucking shitty childhood too, and I didn't have a fucking silver spoon in my mouth, and I'm sure that you two can also relate to some extent. But it is interesting to just break down this figure and be like, oh, you're a little bitch boy,
Yeah, but it gives you that sympathy. We see it in the news with, let's say, like a police shooting, right? They'll tell you about how great the cop is and how wonderful, how much wonderful stuff he's done for the community, and he served in the military and this and that. And then if he shot a black man, they'll be like, and the black man was arrested for drugs in 2016, and they won't do the same thing for him, So I think it's that constant like let's humanize the monster. Instead of the victims, and that's why I didn't like it. I don't want to feel bad for Michael Myers. I don't care what his childhood was. It doesn't excuse what he's doing. You know, we all had bad childhoods, but it doesn't make us go and kill people or hurt people. You know, we have to learn from it and grow from it, but it can't excuse our actions. And I really felt like Rob Zombie kind of did that with his films. I like the idea of, you know, he's just not a good person, Michael Myers, and we're not going to feel any sympathy for him. We're going to feel sympathy for Laurie and her family because they're victims.
That's a great point, and that's what the main canon explores also. And this main canon 2018 does have a lot of really great homages to the ones they retconned. You know, we see the Shamrock masks from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. We see that there's a bathroom scene in the beginning, which came from H2O.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about it, like, because this is also where her alcoholism came from. Like, Halloween H2O walked so this movie could run.
Yeah.
And I do think in a lot of ways, it does hold up where they do talk about trauma. And at the time, Laurie is actually in witness protection, and she's dating a guy. She's the head mistress at this really fancy private school. Which, fun fact, she's also the head mistress in this American Horror Story-esque show called Scream Queens. You could see it on Hulu. It's violent and it's hilarious, and it's fun if you just want to put something on in the background. But she's actually dating a counselor, and he's very much like, all right, well, let's work through whatever you're not telling me. And she's like, oh, I've tried everything. So actually, let me follow up with that with Karen, the daughter of Laurie in the 2018 film, played by Judy Greer. She actually did make it a point to change her life and get away from the trauma that her mom projected on her. CPS came. They said social services, but I know for a fact CPS came and took her away.
It used to, in New York City, it was BCW, Bureau of Child Welfare.
Oh, damn. BCW. And then it became CPS when I was a kid.
Yeah, and then I remember ACS.
Ooh, what's ACS?
Yeah, ACS is another one, like child services, like American Child Services, and that it's evolved. But back in the day, if someone yelled at you, BCW's coming, everybody locked their doors.
Now it's just social services because they defunded it and gave all the money to the police.
Well, yeah, because they need to shoot all the black kids that are fucking in BCW. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go. Yeah. But yeah. So, do you think Karen has escaped this trauma that's come down from her mother? Has she passed it on to her daughter at all? What do we think of her? Does she actually break the chain?
I mean, for me, I think she is pretending that she's broken the chain, but she hasn't even made a dent in it. And because she's pretending to have broken it, she's caused more damage than she should really realizes what she's caused. Because she, she is constantly bad mouthing her mother, constantly downplaying what had transpired, constantly blaming her mother and telling her mother to get over it. Who gets over watching all these people get murdered and being chased consistently by a fucking psychopath who's wielding a knife? I mean, it's not something you just click and it goes away. And that there's just really no empathy for what her mother went through, and is just very focused more on, how this affected me. My mother forced me to fight and to prepare myself and to learn how to use a gun and to learn how to fight myself out of a battle or if I'm captured.
Yeah.
And said, personally me, shit, if I learned all that tactical shit, I'd be like, yeah, come on, zombies, I got you. I'm all in. Like, I can figure out how to build a fucking moat around my house. And I'd be really appreciative of that schooling. And this one, completely opposite, where I'm assuming she wanted to go to brownie meetings and fucking bake cookies. And her mom's like, no, there's evil out there. He's real, and he's going to come and get us at some point. So you need to have all of these situations together and have these skills so that you can protect yourself and your family. But instead, her daughter's like, fuck you. You're not welcome in my house. Get out.
Yeah, I mean, I think people dismiss her trauma a lot in this film. I mean, even Vicky, the granddaughter's best friend, right? Her boyfriend Dave talks about like, well, by today's standards, he killed 5 people, but like, it's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? Because we're in a world of mass shootings, mass bombings.
I'm going to cut you off for a sec. That I counted on a Wikipedia link I found. It's in the show notes. There have been 150 mass shootings between 1978 and 2018 when the movie came out. So just wanted to throw that in there since you brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like we've seen such a a large death toll in this country that I think people have become numb to it. So to people in 2018, listening to Lori's story of how this killer, killed her couple friends and, one random guy and tried to kill her, like, get over it. Like, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, he had a knife, who cares?
I got mugged in the Bronx in 1991. My boyfriend at the time was a veteran, but he had served in the first Iraqi war. And him and I were walking down the street, and two guys pulled guns on us. And, I had no money because I left my bag in his apartment. He had $20, and they hit him over the head. And the guy tells me, "Don't worry, I won't kill you." And they steal his dog tags and the $20. And, that fucked me up for about a year. You know what I mean? Like, I went to therapy and stuff like that because they told me get on my knees, and they would put the guns to our heads. And I was like, I'm not getting on my knees. And the guy's like, what? I'm like, yeah, if you're going to kill me, you're going to have to kill me here. But whatever adrenaline kicked into my body at that time completely left once it was over. And I was fucking traumatized. It took me a long time to fucking, not even to snap out of it, so to say, but to become easier with my handling of it. And when people talk about, people need to get over this trauma of being attacked or being raped or being home invasion or being hurt or having someone die or have someone being killed or any of these things, has absolutely no clue what the fuck they are talking about. And for those things to consistently be portrayed that people just need to get over it and move on is just so unrealistic.
Yeah, and that's such a great point because, like, the idea is, if we're in the city, if we're in the Bronx, okay, especially, in the 90s, now the Bronx, like, I mean, I've been in and out of the city in multiple boroughs. I'm not really, afraid of going into any of them, but to feel safe and then have that safety taken away, it kind of makes you wonder, like, at any moment, can my safety be taken away? And it's trauma is part of it, but also just your animal brain is thinking, okay, I got to be fucking ready. Like, that's what we do. We protect ourselves. And that's what Lori's doing. And, I'm not going to say I agree with either of them 100%. I do think you do have to prepare your kids for stuff without traumatizing them. But I also think that if you make it out of that life and you get a psychology degree and you become a doctor and you're helping people, which is what Karen does. And granted, we always have blind spots with our own family and our own parents. I know that. But why not try and help your mom through it, And maybe she did and she got pushed away because... but still, like, to even Ray's fucking telling her, all right, don't cry, stop crying. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, the worst thing that happened to you today is you got peanut butter on your penis.
Yeah, well, now he's dead, and hanging in the pantry, so whatever.
Yes, he is. But the idea also is, like, this is why women don't come forward. When we do look at it through the Me Too lens, that's why they don't come forward. Every time they're trying to let their feelings out and tell you about the trauma, which involves them reliving it, you are constantly trying to tell them that it was their fault or something like that. I'm not saying you in particular, because you did say that Lori made stupid moves as a kid. She definitely doesn't as an adult. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, for sure. She definitely comes back. However, there's no body. Nobody fucking sees a body come out after she burns him to the crisp. So, personally, me, I would have fucking handcuffed myself to him and was like, look, we're dying together. Or I would have handcuffed him to, seriously, like, this is to the end. Or handcuffed him to something, and I need to see, once everything's done, his crisp body.
That's why we got a sequel on the way.
Oh, you think?
Yeah,
who would have thought?
You need a sequel. But that is a great point, too, because actually at H2O, every movie requires a classroom scene talking about a piece of literature that's connected to the film it's in. I unfortunately, I can't recall the exact piece of literature they're reviewing, but in H2O, they're talking about an individual who his family was actually killed by the villain of the story. And at the end, his redemption in taking down this villain was because he really had nothing else to lose. I think that, Lori fights hard because she does have a lot to lose, but also, like you said, handcuff yourself to him because she'll never be a human again. She is a monster. She has become a monster to defeat her monster. And I think we all do that to a certain extent. We do take on characteristics of our abusers that become a part of us.
Yeah, I agree to an extent, but I feel like at the end, in a way, she finally got her family back. Like, Michael gave her family back. All three generations.
Some people go camping, and some people do that.
All three generations take a crack at Michael, right?
Well, whatever works,
they
Mike.
do.
I mean, it worked in the end. So camping, murdering my crazy brother, ex, and uncle, it works out.
I mean that I honestly I do think that's cathartic, and I know it might be myopic to say, but like, because there's all the when they go low we go high, and like, you know, if people are violent to you, don't be violent back, and all this other stuff. And you see there's a moment where, you know, Allison is looking at the kitchen knife, and she has to save her mom.
Yeah.
And she still has the knife with her at the end, and that can mean a number of things. Did she have to become like the aggressor in order to beat the aggressor? Is she now going to be constantly holding on to that like she held on to the bloody knife? Will she never feel safe again? You know, similar to that year after you got mugged in the Bronx. It's, you know, it's a lot to explore there.
100%. And you know, I'm glad you touched on that. You know, when they go low, we go high, and it really burns me because there's so many people out there during this time in our existence are quoting Dr. King and talking about, oh, well, you know, Dr. King was for peace, you know, and really almost, no, a lot of people are putting up these fake quotes that never was said, but with Dr. King's face. And a real quote that came from Dr. King is, a rioter is the language of a voice that is unheard. And that is what Dr. King was about. And, you know, when people start talking about, well, you know, are you okay burning down something? You know, if this got burnt down, if your house got burnt down, if your business got burnt down, I was like, if my business got burnt down and I was able to fucking save one black life, the insurance will pay for the fucking business. I'll hold a Zoom funeral for the fucking windows. Enough already. Like, this needs to be a realistic thing. Those are property and pieces. We are talking about human lives. And, you know, if you even go into Michael Che, he's not even talking about, he talks about, we're not looking for equal rights. We're looking for just fucking mattering. And that's the bare minimum of matter. And how that can't be the main focus when people start coming back into this all lives matter. All lives can't matter until everyone is fucking seen equally. That's like, if that's your platform of all lives matter, you have no fucking clue. You have no ability to really realize what's been going out there for hundreds of years, let alone if we're just talking about our generation. But that you're so blind to fucking realizing that people are being killed in the street, but you want to bitch. With immunity. And you want to bitch about you can't get your favorite fucking soda at the grocery store and your life is ruined. Like, come on, people. Enough. Perspective needs to be a part of this plan.
Definitely.
My outlook on it is this. If they cared so much about the property being destroyed during riots, they would hold the fucking police accountable. It's not like they're just rioting to riot. They are asking for something. And I mentioned it last week's episode. Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing unless it has to, unless there's a demand, unless power is pushed to do it.
Facts. 100%.
You know? And I know that wasn't the theme of this episode, but speaking of Black Lives Matter, can we talk about how white these films are?
Yeah, I do just want to piggyback though real quick off of what you were saying about you know,
back that piggy.
Yeah, my turn now.
For you two being vegans and me not a vegan.
I know, a lot of pork references. You were talking about how like Lori and her daughter and her you know, her granddaughter all had to kind of become this monster, and that is a trope of the final girl, right? The last girl. Like, I think that in the article I mentioned earlier that I read from, you know, that is kind of what makes the final girl survive. She has to slowly transform into a monster herself to fight back and survive, and we see that with all three generations of these women at the very end. And you know, at the very end of the film, we don't know how much they've changed, right? Like, we don't know what they're going to be like anymore now that they have, you know, acted in violence, may have taken Michael Myers' life, though most likely not. You know, it's definitely going to change them. While, you know, Lori was ready for this, was her daughter and especially her granddaughter probably weren't. But they were all forced to take that next step. And I think that's such an important part, you know, for the final girl trope. And like, they've really brought it to being a stronger character in 2008, in the 2018 film, rather than just being victims. They're fighting back. They're prepared. They're more ready. And I think that's important to show that as we progress, you know, because the 2018 film is kind of, you can see a lot of differences from the 1978 version. You know, it's definitely a more modern, progressive film overall. I mean, even the granddaughter's costume of Bonnie and Clyde, she's Clyde and her boyfriend's Bonnie, right? We see this throughout the film that they definitely have, shown just how much has changed over the years. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Do you hear the oinking or no?
I don't hear oinking.
That's where I'm about to piggyback. So, when you talk about the trope of the final girl becoming the monster, I do think that in popular media, there's also a false narrative of if you do what they do, you're just as bad as them, which is what came from last week when we did the Purge election year. That's something that Roan says. To Bishop. If you kill him, you're just as bad as him. No, you're fucking not. Okay, I do want to put that out there that you may have to use similar tactics to beat your aggressor, but in the end, they are the aggressor for a reason. When you take down your aggressor, you stop there. That's the difference. You know what I mean? It's not like, Mel, you keep bringing it up into real life, so I'm going to do that too.
Right.
It's not like people are being anarchists and being violent and out in the streets because they want to burn everything down. It's that this system is fucked and it needs a complete reconstruction. No, well, not to use the term reconstruction historically, but it needs a complete overhaul. It needs a facelift, whatever you want to call it. And it's not like they're going to keep burning stuff down. And once again, that's the narrative of those in power. People could be seen marching and they'll call it a riot. What were you saying, Mel?
No, it's like these morons who believe Antifa is an organization, they serve fucking tea and cookies at the meeting. It's like they have no idea the basis of anti-fascism. They have no clue. They've never fought in these situations, nor have they been aware of what this looks like. I have had a situation where in my past, I've had people complain in my career about very minute things. And I could tell you one where someone was complaining so intensely on how this beverage was not available at this time, and it was the worst thing in life that he has ever heard. And I just stopped and I looked. I said, you want to know what the worst thing I ever heard? Darfur, Rwanda. And he looks at me and I'm like, you're really going to say this is the worst thing you have ever heard? That's your perspective in this world? Granted, I don't work for that company anymore. However, I'm just when it comes to those type of situations where there's just no ability to get it. And I have to tell you, Mike, I am to the point where I am emotionally exhausted with trying to get them to fucking get it.
You're not alone. You're really not.
It's just so overwhelming to me. And I personally, in my lifetime, never would have thought that this is something that we would still be discussing at this level, that this would still be an issue that needs to continuously be discussed, and that our brothers and sisters and like-minded people out in the world right now are continuously fighting a great fight with zero understanding from the outside entities, and rather calling them people are calling them the Bolsheviks. They don't even know who the fucking Bolsheviks are. You know what I mean? Come on.
Yeah.
You don't know what they were fighting for. They were fighting
really
for things. You know what I mean? And that's 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were fighting and they were rioting because they wanted their equal rights. And this is where people just get lost. They just hear these words and they hear these trigger words and they hear these drips and drabs of bullshit and piece together their own reality and make it so much harder for all of us. And, to the point where sometimes I feel like hands up,
It is always ironic that the demographic of people who are all about history and, here's what the Confederate flag really represents and don't try and erase our history and all this stuff, you can't see the parts of history that are okay, this is why we need reparations because of 300 years of unpaid labor followed by Jim Crow, followed by, by speed bumps put in the way at every single thing. You don't know about Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. You don't know about the Black Wall Street bombing. Why are you talking about history when you don't know that we are a country that has been built on riots and unfortunately it's been built on violence and blood and bones of Native and African people, but also whenever people wanted more rights, they've always had to fight for it. Every concession, every step of the way. Black people being able to vote, black people being free. It's always had to be a fight every step of the way. This is no different. And guess what? It doesn't have to be a fight. Hold cops accountable. Get them better training. Take their funding. Put it into other. I'm preaching the choir here.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I mean, and I know that this is something I feel like all of the outlets that I'm sure the three of us listen to continuously continue to talk. And if there's any way to change the mindset of someone, I mean, like, wow, was I able to do this? But I feel like that we've lost that ability. There seems to be no swaying anymore, because we're not, you keep seeing all these memes and stuff like that. Like, I will agree to disagree with you about if Coke or Pepsi's better. You know what I mean? Or agree to disagree with you if you like Chicago or New York style pizza. But I am not agreeing to disagree with you if you fucking think it's okay for a cop to shoot an unarmed black man in the street.
And like, speaking of color, I think another common trope of horror films is, when there's a black character, they're usually the one that dies first, right? I think that was for many, many years that happened.
Oh, yeah.
But here in Halloween 2018, we only have really 2 black characters, neither of who are major characters, but they both survive, so there's something, right?
Well, yeah, but they were minute, and they got to stay in there. But I just want to piggyback really quickly on Mike's bit about the Confederate flag. So in August, Al Franken on his podcast had Susan Neiman. She's a German Holocaust and American. She writes about them. She has all these books about what had transpired during the Holocaust and where Germany was with the Nazi.
On those things?
Say that again?
She's like a scholar on those
Correct.
things?
So she has all this stuff put into place where she writes about all the history of the Holocaust, how the Nazi Party came about, and so on and so forth. And she discusses, and a question comes up about how many Nazi statues are in Germany. And the answer is 0, because they were treasonous. They were against the country. People tend to not realize that the Nazi Party was not all of Germany. They were a group of people who thought they were better than the rest, and they were better than the Jews, and so they took over and did what horrible things they did. The same thing is with the Confederacy. They are not a part of American history. They are a part of Confederacy history. That's who they are. They are treasonous. They are against the country. They wanted to succeed from the United States. That's their whole purpose. So for that to even be utilized as a reason to keep their statues up because it's American history is total bullshit. It's racist history that people want to keep going and are not willing to stop it because this is who they are. There's no Nazi. There's no fucking Adolf Hitler
statues.
Statues in Germany because he was a fucking terrorist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sure.
that our fucking 45 Orange Honey Boo Boo has decided that that's a part of our history is more absurd to me than anything. And when it comes to people who tell me, well, I like some things that Trump does, we're fucking done.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think we're all kind of in the same boat with that.
Can we talk about how the cops are represented in the movies too?
To me, the first cop, again, doesn't believe Loomis, Annie's dad. Another one, and he's like, oh, I'm not going to waste my time standing here in the bushes looking for the boogeyman. You know what I mean? Like, again, this complete failure to believe. I mean, why would this doctor, this psychiatrist, travel all the way to this shit little town, to spy on this house where Mike Myers killed his sister for just shits and giggles, and that the police will take this seriously, and then 5 people are killed? And was there any retribution to that? Was there recourse on that where they were like, you know what, you guys fucked up.
Of course
he
not.
warned you.
No.
And this is what happens. These young people were killed. And then fast forward into 2018, the doctor in that situation obviously wound up being someone who idolized Mike Myers. But the sergeant in this situation was there in 78. he understood the dynamic and was willing. He was like, this is what needs to have happen. However, though, it seemed so minimal. Like, there's a crazed murderer. Why is there not like 100 cops out? Why is there no helicopters out? Why is there no massive force? The fucking National Guard. A black dude's walking down the street and people are questioning him left and right. But a white guy is going through this nice little town, going into people's houses and chopping them up while Halloween trick-or-treating is happening, and no one knows the wiser. And that's really where I'm like, wait a minute. First, they didn't believe. Second, they believed, but there wasn't the kind of response that warranted this situation.
Yeah, and that's common in all of the films too. In Halloween 4, there is a new sheriff. Brackett has since retired, but like he at least believes Loomis and he goes with him personally. But there are I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5, but there's a moment in which Michael kills like the whole police station.
Yeah,
right.
He kills the whole police station, and it's up to a bunch of rednecks with guns to now be the heroes and take care of Michael Myers. It's up to like vigilantes and stuff like that. Michael isn't even like he's not afraid of the cops, which is an interesting thing. It's almost like he knows, like, listen, I'm gonna get a good amount of killing done tonight, before they catch me. He even in H2O, there are cops across the street from the house he's in, and he's actively killing a woman that woman is actually the nurse from the first movie. They brought her back for H2O. It was really cool. And Jamie Lee, Janet Lee was featured. Janet Lee, is that Jamie Lee Curtis's mom?
Janet Lee, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Janet Lee also had a role in H2O. But what were you going to say?
It kind of almost goes to like back to capitalism a little bit, where they don't want to shut down Halloween to save people's lives, right? Like Officer Hawkins in 2018 tells, I think, the mayor or whatever the town, that Mike.
I think he's like a sheriff.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever he is.
Whatever.
Yeah, that Michael Myers is on the loose, and they're talking about shutting down for Halloween, and he kind of laughs, right? Like it's not going to happen. We're going to tell the people they can't go out.
Yeah, he's like, what are we going to do? Shut down Halloween?
Yeah, like it's no big deal,
Cancel Halloween.
And it's a perfect disguise for Michael Myers. People are going to parties, they're dressing up, they're getting candy. So no one's going to think twice to see him walking around, going house to house. And, people are hearing about it and are like, yeah, okay, I'll lock my doors. Like no one's taking it really that seriously. And of course, Michael's able to literally go on this one block, house to house, and just murder all these people. It's a perfect cover.
I would like to point out that they do kind of do a good job of like when the chief does, or sheriff, the cop with the hat. Oh, he's Sheriff Barker. He is a sheriff.
Okay.
There we go. When the sheriff does meet Hawkins and Dr. Sartain in the hospital, he does say like, oh, we found most of the escapees. Like one of them was at a library checking their email. The other one, the others were holding hands, frolicking through the field, chasing butterflies. Like I did like that because it was very much like, oh, well, Michael Myers is the exception.
Yeah.
For the most part, they're just people who need help. But then again, in the beginning, they did show them all losing their minds. The one guy with the umbrella was made to be weird, but guess what? They were all standing in the fucking sun. Why doesn't everyone have an umbrella?
Yeah, for sure. And they're chained up to those giant anvils.
Yeah, it's really disgusting. It is. He's like, oh, they get exercise and a great diet. I'm like, dude, are you seeing where you work right now?
Yeah, I was like, exercise. They're tied to anvils.
I mean, Michael has been doing something because he is jacked. He doesn't look it, but he's got a lot of functional strength. He's doing CrossFit or something.
Listen, he's stuck in a circle with nothing to do. Of course he's working out.
Lucky him. COVID has not had me fucking working out.
Yeah, me neither. The sheriff then follows up by saying, oh, Michael Myers on the loose with a bunch of nutbags. That's great. And I'm like, damn it, man, you had it.
Yeah.
I will also link in the show notes to a study of average police response time where we live. New York City, New York isn't New York, isn't Long Island, but 6.69 minutes is the average response time. Fastest time is 5.46. That's in San Francisco. Slowest, and this is as of 2019, I believe, is Fort Worth, Texas, 9.5 minutes. So it is interesting just to take a look at that and be like, Michael's definitely taking advantage of that And then also there is this narrative. I know my fiance's father has mentioned it a couple times. He's like, oh, well, if you want to defund the police, he thinks it means abolish them. If you want to dismantle all the police, then what about, when crimes happen? Who's going to show up? Blah, blah, blah. But we've talked about it before, I think. Usually they show up after the crime has already been
Yes. Committed. Yeah. I mean, this movie goes to show you, just like in real life, they can't handle the situation, right? There's a guy walking around with a knife, and they can't even stop him. It's up to Lori and her family to finally finish his night of mass murdering. Like, these police, even though they may seem a little more competent, they still can't get the job done.
No, not at all. I mean, maybe they were abolished, but who knows? Maybe they're only working with a third of the group that they had before, fucking defunded. And, they could put a little ticker tape on the bottom. This police force was defunded by immigrants, socialists, whatever they want to.
It was all their fault.
Whoever they want to blame.
I do have a question for you, for both of you. Officer Hawkins hits Michael Myers with his car, and then he says he's going to blow his fucking head off. How do you feel about that? Do you think that Michael Myers deserves to die at the hands of the police?
Well, my whole thing was I'm like, yeah, fucking kill him. And then the doctor's like, he's already dead. You killed him, blah, blah, blah. But we know all that, how the infatuation is transpiring between the two of them. But you know what? I got to tell you, yeah, he should have died. It should have ended right there because there's nothing stopping this guy and it has to end. Now, again, I'm not pro death penalty, but pro slasher film death penalty, I'm okay with. This guy fucking killed all these people and it's continuously. And again, if that mask was darker, we'd be in a different situation.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they would have had him.
And Mike, how about you?
My answer to that is I'm conflicted, just like I was when we watched Watchmen. Because in Watchmen, the police were actually the good guys, and it was very weird to see that reversal.
Sort of.
And we're seeing that here too. Like he's not going to through the justice system. He doesn't want to give Michael a trial by jury of his peers or anything. Sorry, I just thought of a jury of his peers, and you have Leatherface and Jason.
I gotta tell you,
How do
Mike.
You find the defendant?
Mike,
somebody needs to draw that. Please.
I kid you not, and I hate to interrupt. That was literally the vision in my head just now. I had Freddy.
Amazing.
Jason, Texas Chainsaw, and I actually had Evil Dead in there as well. Nice. So we were just mixing it all up.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, get some Deadites and stuff. But I think that we're pro. I mean, I've said it before. Whenever we watch Copaganda, we're always on the side of the cops because the story puts them in that way. Mm-hmm. We see Elliot Stabler lose his shit on someone in SVU, and we're for it because we know that person is a rapist. Right. We know that these people have done bad things, so we're pro cops doing bad things to them. Mm-hmm. So obviously, in this movie, I know Michael Myers. I know that he deserves to be killed. I know he deserves to be killed by Lori, if anything. But I mean, if you could prevent a couple deaths, run the motherfucker.
I mean, I bring it up because I know we've discussed on this podcast before that cops should not be judge, jury, and executioner. That nobody, no matter the crime they've committed, deserves to be killed, without a trial, not even talking about death penalty, just killed on the street. And Michael Myers is obviously evil, as they say, but he's only out because of the incompetence of the state again, right? He should have been contained. He should have been in prison. They should have been able to stop him from the beginning. And at the point that he's run over and almost killed, he's actually not committing a crime at the moment, right? He's just walking down the street. So, I think, when we talk about all these police shootings and things like that, you do have to kind of think about that in the back of your head. Yeah, from a movie standpoint, kill the motherfucker. But if this is real life, they probably shouldn't kill him, right? So it's just something that I thought of when that scene happened. And like you said, we're made to cheer for the cop, right? And obviously we are. He seems like he's a good guy in the movie. He wants to stop Michael Myers, who's killing people. But how many times does this happen? And that person doesn't deserve to die. So I don't know. Just a thought I had.
And he has black friends.
Yeah, he does have black friends.
He has black friends. He's playing the Back to the Future pinball machine, and that. It's interesting. I think they made that very. I think they did that on purpose.
For sure, yeah.
I don't know. You know what? Last thing I'll ask you, Mel, is like, what would you have liked to have seen as far as representation in this film goes? Because when I was talking to Ty, I was like, well, they could have made her boyfriend black, but then also her boyfriend is portrayed as an asshole. And in the deleted scenes, he actually gets arrested.
Right.
Do we make it that Laurie, the father of Karen, is mixed, or maybe Karen's husband is black? But then again, he's a doofus, and he gets gets killed anyway.
They could have made Vicky, or
like,
they could have made Dave black.
And then Vicky gets killed. Like, it's a tough call because, like I said at the beginning, film is a lot more powerful than people give it credit for.
Of
So when
course.
we watch it, do we not react to these black people being murdered, hypothetical black people in this movie being murdered because it's a slasher film? But does that then make us not care in real life, or do we make one of the main protagonists black, which might seem forced? What would you have suggested? What do you think, Mel?
Well, me personally, because whenever you see a black person in any of these type of films, it's mainly the dummy who's going to get killed early, or the person who is causing all the havoc, or just some random passerby. It's never in the situation that that person is the heroine, the one who is being able to defeat this evil. And
which is why Jordan Peele's movies are
correct,
what they are.
correct. And Jordan Peele coming to where he is now has opened that door to where it's not the blacks being the ones who are causing the horror. It's the ones that the horror is coming to. And it's poignant in this time to understand what that represents. And in these type of films, and you can go through an entire filmography of different things where you'll be looking at where these black people are put into these little pockets in these movies, and it's never as a heroine, ever.
Yeah, Romero's the only one who really was fair about that when he did Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, not in that order, obviously, but making black protagonists, he was like the only one to really think of that. And that, what was that, Ty? That was in the 50s or something? I'm looking at my phone right now.
Yeah. It should have been 58.
Yeah, so that was even before Halloween. Yeah, so okay,
Yeah.
no, I definitely like that. I have a lot more notes, and but they're mostly just story related, not necessarily social. I think
I'm sorry,
really
68.
nailed it as far as
68.
socially-
1968 for Night of the Living Dead.
68. Okay, so it's
Tyler,
10 years
you
before
failed
Halloween.
us.
I know. I'm sorry. I said 58 because we were saying 50s, but it's definitely 68.
They do have this great line in H2O where she's arguing with her son Josh Hartnett, who plays John, and he says, like, I'm not responsible for you, which I think, if you've ever grown up with parents who are going through some shit, that is something that you relate to, and they've really brought that into this story very well.
I do want to point out there's some really cool things they do in 2018 to kind of flip the genre on its head a little bit, and they did it in H2O as well, where like Laurie is almost becoming the hunter instead of the prey, right? Like there's the part where she gets knocked over the balcony, and Michael Myers gets distracted, he looks back, and she's gone. Right now, he doesn't know where she is.
Well, also because she makes that comment, she says, "I've been praying for years for him to break out," and they ask her why, and she goes, "So I can kill him."
Yeah. Yep. And like in H2O, right, there's a part where she drops down behind him with the axe, and like he didn't know where she was, and I thought that was great. She's kind of taking the power back, and that's become a theme of her last few appearances. To fight back against him. I also thought there was a great line in there where we talked about it earlier about the family and how Laurie's daughter was taken away from her, and she's having a great conversation with her granddaughter because her granddaughter has been kept away from her. The mom doesn't invite her to family events anymore, and the granddaughter really wants to spend time with Laurie. She wants to see her, and her granddaughter asked her about all the experiences that her mom and Laurie faced together, and she says to her, the way she raised her made her hate her. That's fine as long as she was prepared for the horrors of the world. And I thought that was great because obviously it ruined their relationship, but she was trying to make her prepared in her own way. She was trying to show her love, and maybe it didn't always come across that way. And I think we can all kind of have had those experiences with family where they don't show us love in the traditional sense, but they do have a way of showing it that they mean well, even if it doesn't do what what they'd hoped it would do for us.
No, those are really, really great points. And, they do bring up the whole psychological aspect of it. And Karen is very much so like, the world is full of peace and understanding and happiness. And she's not wrong, but she's not right.
Right,
and neither is Lori. I do think that there is a moderation of both, that we do have to believe in people and we do have to take care of each other. But we have to understand that not everybody has that mentality.
Yep.
And Karen, she... And this is going back to what I said about, when you take the mask off, you're just a little bitch boy, right? Like Karen ends up having to resort to using her gun that she learned how to shoot as a child. Because guess what? She doesn't know where her mom is. She could be dead. And now she has to protect her own daughter.
Yeah.
So everything that she was taught is coming in handy. And she plays the victim, which is so great here.
It's awesome.
Because Michael doesn't appear until he thinks she's afraid.
Yeah, she's like, I can't do it. Mom, save us, right? It's this great scene.
But it goes back to now she realizes what her mother was preparing her for.
Yep. She is ready, right? She tried to fight against that, but she is ready. And she shoots him, right? She hits him. One shot, she gets him.
Gotcha. I love it.
The last point I wanted to make was about Michael Myers' mask. So, in the first one, it's I believe it's a William Shatner mask they use, right? They spray painted it white or painted it white.
Correct.
And it's become such an iconic part of horror, right? People dress like that for Halloween every year. They even take the time to kind of age the mask in 2018. And I think what's kind of interesting is that like Michael uses that mask like how Batman, Bruce Wayne's really Batman, not Bruce Wayne. It's like kind of like that for Michael. Yes. Like once he becomes under the mask, that's his true self. He kills his sister in a mask, a different mask, but still a mask. And then once he gets that mask back in 2018, he hunts down the podcasters to get it, and then he puts it on. You see him kind of like caressing it almost for a minute before he puts it on. Like it's this. It's very
it's his lover.
Yeah, it's powerful to him. It gives him back his strength, and now he's able to go after Lori and everyone because he has this mask. And I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of show that.
But even as a little boy, when he grabs that clown mask and puts it on, it's almost like you could see, because that shot again through the actual cut out whole eyes of that mask. Once he puts that mask on, you kind of see the body gesture, even though you're looking through his lens, where he's almost like a sigh of relief, like, okay, I'm me now.
Yep.
And now I can behave as me and do what I need to do for me. And when the father rips the mask off, once they get him outside, it's almost like he is then transformed into the person who doesn't speak. I'm now shut down, and this is where I'm at, and I will be completely blank.
He's like stripped of his identity almost. It's definitely unsettling.
Yeah, same in in the 78 film at the end, Laurie rips that mask off of him, and he takes the time to put it back on. And that's kind of what allows
it makes him distraught in the hallway when it comes off. Like, it's almost a frantic moment where you see him lose his bearings, and he drops his knife, and he gets the mask back on, and he puts it on as quickly as possible and gets up so that he can regain himself and get himself, standard and ready for what he needs to do. And he's taken aback for those few moments.
Yeah, it's like a protection for him.
Yeah, and that's the kind of humanization I do like to see. You don't need to show him as a kid going through trauma and all this other stuff like they did in the zombie films. But we did mention before how he's always putting these the bodies in these like tableaus and these displays and everything. And one of the notes that the actor, I believe of 2018, was given was like, think of how a cat hunts. Think of how a big cat hunts and move like that cat. And that's kind of what Michael did. But he isn't a predator. He is a human because, actual natural predators don't play with their prey. I mean, they do play with their prey, but they're not going to like leave them like, displayed in an artful fashion. And that is what shows that he is evil.
Yeah.
It's not just him, surviving, and obviously he doesn't have to, but it is him being evil. And, when you brought up the whole him getting his mask from the gas station, I really love that scene because he's in plain sight. He's hiding in plain sight and he doesn't fit in, but nobody is looking for him.
No.
And, it's the same thing in the first one. And I think it's the same thing now that we are looking for certain enemies Meanwhile, we do have white supremacists hiding in plain sight. I know that Michael's not meant to portray white supremacists, but we talked about that a lot here. Like, what are you made to be afraid of versus what should you be?
Yeah, it all ties
Should
together.
you be afraid of the idea of protesters marching down your street and burning your house down? No, because it's not going to happen. They don't want your fucking house in the suburbs. They want justice and accountability, and that's it. You should really be worried about the people who are going to be vigilantes and bringing guns to these things to, specifically looking for trouble.
The Kyle Rittenhouses of the world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. What did you? How did you guys feel about the humor in this film? Because there's not really much in the '78 version, but there's quite a bit.
Other than when he puts the sheet over it, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't think they meant it to be though. It just wound up being funny, but it is.
Oh, I laughed hysterically.
Oh yeah, that's fucked up. No, that wasn't. I mean, it probably was funny, but
yeah, like there's a lot of humor in this movie. Like Vicky's very funny. The boy she's babysitting is really funny. There's a lot of.
I liked it.
I did too. It breaks the tension a bit.
Exactly, and that's why.
But it's a very modern move, I think, for horror movies, right? That's kind of like what we do now.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I watched Us recently, the other Jordan Peele flick, the follow-up from Get Out, and there was a lot of humor thrown in there, and in the behind the scenes, he did mention, like, he does that because, it does cut the tension a bit and allows the viewer to have a little bit of a respite from the terror. I think in Halloween it was used well because the terror was so high. I remember that last scene where Laurie and Michael are having their cat and mouse in the house, rhyme unintentional, and they I was like on the edge of my seat. I was clutching my armrests and I was scared. For the first time in years, I was scared watching a movie, and I so that way I did like the humor that was thrown in every now and then. And Michael has a sense of humor, so why shouldn't we? He fucking made a dude's skull into a jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah.
He loves what he does, and clearly so do the writers. I can't wait to see how Halloween Kills comes out. I do hope it will be the last film, at least focusing on Michael Myers.
I think they're doing two more. I that's what I heard.
They are doing two. You're right. There's Halloween Kills, and then there's the one after that.
It's like Halloween Dies or something.
2022, Halloween Ends. And then the next one is Halloween Kills, which is supposed to come out next week.
Yeah, but they had to push it back. So.
But yeah, so this was awesome, guys. Thanks so much for making the time to be on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It was an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to have you on some other ones. It's normally between the two of us. I'm the one who does most of the talking between Ty and myself. So it was good to take a break and just kind of let you share your thoughts. And
awesome!
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to whatever we do from here. And I thank you both for being a part of it. Any closing thoughts, Mel?
My closing thoughts is I know those out there who are a believer in not voting for the lesser of two evils, but remember Roe v. Wade is on the table, and this is not a time to think about these things. We need to, this is not a test. We need to allow women to choose their own bodies and what they do with them.
Cool. Any thoughts about Halloween in particular? Or
my thoughts about Halloween is hand sanitizer.
No,
sanitize anything.
I mean the Halloween. Yeah,
there's very few movies that the person who wrote it, directed it, and did the music. So for 1978, I got to tell you that is pretty spectacular. It didn't happen. Writing the entire score is a really big deal, and I appreciate what was done in that film. I appreciate Jamie Lee Curtis's role in the film, and how she's evolved. I mean, I do think she's still a fucking punk, and she should have manned up better in the first one. But obviously, if we would,
Jamie Lee Curtis,
well, a little bit of both, Lori. But it's like if she would have manned up, we would have nothing to talk about. So that's a reality check. You know what I mean? So it's like there's no way that could have been the scene. However, though, I got to tell you, for the 18 one and for where women stand and the ability of, getting back and being able to say, you know what, fuck you, I'm not allowing you to terrorize me anymore, really, really takes hold in this situation. And I appreciate that it went full circle and that it definitely closed that gap and situation for those who have watched all the way through. So I appreciated it tremendously.
Fantastic. And Ty, what about yourself?
Number one, being a soldier, so I want to remind people that they are going to be voting on the Supreme Court whether Biden wins or not, because they're going to do it before Election Day. So while I do understand Roe v. Wade is very important, I don't think it's going to matter come Election Day because they're already going to be doing it.
As I now be annoying, Ty, and I apologize in advance. Unless they all get COVID and they don't show up for Congress, this isn't happening.
That's how we all got to hope for COVID. COVID's the only hero we have.
So
now.
I'm hoping for I'm voting COVID.
But
the great equalizer.
Yes, but about Halloween, they are great. I love the original. I love 2018. I thought it was a fantastic sequel. I think they really did a great job making it modern, but while staying true to the original story. It's got some great music, some great tension building, and Michael Myers is a very scary entity.
I think you've you both said it pretty well. We said most things there are to say about these films. I'm looking forward to the next ones, and I just love the lore in general, speaking about it, and being able to relate it to real-world situations. So, Mel, thank you so much for being on the Politipop podcast with us. We greatly appreciate it. Can't wait to see you again. All right, listeners, you can listen to us, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Please go to YouTube. You'll find special content, including outtakes. There's quite a few from this episode. And you can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. Thanks so much for all of our new followers. We just broke 700 today. And, remember, no comrades left behind, hashtag no comrades under 1K. You can find us on Instagram at Politipop Podcast. Email us at politipopcast@gmail.com. Find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com because we don't just pull this shit out of nowhere. And really a special thanks to all of you listeners and followers and to Antonia Chava for logo design. For the Politipop Podcast, I've been Mike Booch.
I've been Ty.
And I'm Mel.
And remember, no matter what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're choosing to scare yourself with this month, never stop thinking, never stop learning, and always remember to read between the lines.
And scene.
There he is.